working now for a Swiss security company called SIGPA, and we have a partnership here in the country.
International company.
Indeed. We have a background in banknotes, security inks, and also doing serialization for tobacco, alcohol, and now also with pharma.
You make money.
Well, I don't want to comment. Maybe we do. It's a private company. I cannot possibly comment on that. But before joining SIGPA, I used to work for the pharma industry. So I was head of the European Industry Association. So this would be like AIPM in Russia. I was head of the European one.
Yes.
And in Europe, the serialization, the track and trace for pharmaceuticals was actually initiated by the pharmaceutical industry itself.
Yes.
It turned into legislation, but it was initially an idea from the industry, and I was part of designing that. So I will be talking tomorrow about the European experience, and I will talk about what's going on with track and trace around the world.
Yes, I understand. Thank you. And what is your experience in track and trace technologies?
Well, it's been an interesting journey. Okay, so we started 10 years ago in Europe, thinking about what are we going to do? Are we going to apply RFID? What technology would we have? Remember, this was years before blockchain even came up. Right. So it took some time to agree that the simplest, most robust technology was to work with 2D barcodes using the international standard from GS1.
Yes.
And then we will have a database, a repository. And that the idea being that the pharmacies will scan and verify each pack, okay? So that was agreed some 10 years ago. Now, it took a long time in Europe, not for technical reasons, but because we needed to get everybody's buy-in. Remember, it's 28 member states.
Yes.
It was driven by the sector. Bureaucracy, it's about getting everybody's buy-in. It was, even if it's legislation now, it was actually an initiative from the sector. So we needed to convince the pharmacists, we needed to convince the wholesalers now. Now, takes a lot of time. Now, when we have the experience, I think you could move more quickly into other sectors. And it'll be very interesting to hear more during this conference about Russia's very ambitious program to do it for everything.
Yes, and in this case, what do you think about the attempts of the realization of track and trace technology and serialization and aggregation in Russia in pharma sector?
Yeah, so I think it's quite impressive, the program in Russia.
It is, at your opinion, is this realistic?
Yes, absolutely realistic. I think the particular component that we're looking at right now, that we now to have to accommodate in the workflow of big pharma, is the crypto requirement.
Yes.
That is being discussed, right?
At the time, the crypto is the biggest point in the industry.
Yeah, it's being hotly debated right now. But I think if you put aside for a second the logistics around that, the rest of this is perfectly doable within the timelines that have been suggested, because the global pharma industry has now invested in equipment for direct marking. You also have the option of labels, and the companies have figured out how to do aggregation and how to connect with repositories. So I think these timelines are perfectly realistic.
And what do you think about the form of realization? And you say in Europe it's an industrial system without the government and without the private companies. What do you think about it? Because in Russia we make it in case of the government and private partnership.
Yes. No, so I think that, and I've been saying this to I've been at the Rostrandzor many times here over the years, and I've been telling everyone, including in China and elsewhere, that the European approach is very unique, where it's driven by the stakeholders, as we call them. I think that realistically, worldwide, this has to be legislated by the government. But having said that, and having been in pharma a long time, I think I would like to see everywhere a collaborative approach. So even if it's the government decides, you should work with the sectors to make it work practically. And then also I think down the line there will be added services. I mean, consumers, citizens can benefit from this beyond fighting counterfeits. And that's where I would like to see a constructive dialogue between governments and private operators.
And what do you think about the role and place of the professional education in the system of track and trace technologies in a lot of sectors, and in case with pharma?
This will be critically important for all the sectors, because this is really what we've seen. in Europe is that it takes a lot of time to get everybody familiar with the concepts of serialization, of aggregation, and all these terms, right? It's easier for big companies, but we have to make sure we get everyone on board. We can't leave the small companies behind. You know, everybody has to be on board, right? So I think that particularly as you scale from one sector to the other, let's make sure we learn and take all those learnings into the other sectors. And that's why I think the initiative here in Russia with the center for training is really the right time. It's absolutely necessary.
And what do you think about the perspectives of collaboration between Russian education centers in track and trace technologies and with the European institutes?
Oh yeah, I know, and we see actually tomorrow at the conference you have several speakers from Europe, from EDQM, from the UK regulatory agency, from WHO in Geneva, and myself. So I think there's a lot of expertise in Europe, and I think Moscow, well, Russia is a nice country as a whole, but I think you have no problem with getting guest speakers on a faculty for training.
Yeah, we are really fast, but we need, of course, the collaboration with the European experts, because you tell the process of the serialization in Europe takes 8 years.
Yeah, but he can go much faster. Now that we have the knowledge, if you transfer this knowledge quickly, you can go much faster.
Great knowledge case about the old systems.
And we've made mistakes, and we've learned from them.
Some things very important to know about the mistakes.
Yeah, and some things we underestimated. For instance, we underestimated in pharma the IT complexities, the interaction with ERP systems, interaction with government repositories. That we underestimated the challenges. But there were also some learnings when it comes to printing and labels, which I think we also need to benefit from here in Russia.
Thank you very much. And maybe you tell some words for the start of new professional education project, Track and Trace Educational Center.
No, I've learned about the initiative here, and I think it's an excellent idea. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think that there will be many European experts that will be very happy to come here and be part of faculty to share their knowledge of things that worked and the mistakes. So I look forward to being invited to come here.
Thank you. And what do you think about to take part in our project?
No, I'm very happy to do so. Very happy to do so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Very much.
Thanks again for the invitation. Thank you.